What's down, people, and welcome back to another episode of Ghetto Gospel. So where we left off at. Last week, Jacob moved his family on down to Egypt. Joseph set them up with a nice piece of land in a good part of town. And some of them even got a job taking care of Pharaoh's livestock and animals and whatnot. And now we caught up. So the last thing we read last week in verse 12 was that Joseph made sure that his pops and his brothers and all of their people had food after they showed up to Egypt. And that's important because in verse 13, it said that there wasn't no food in the whole region. The famine had been going on for so long that folks was like, come on now, still? And apparently so many people had came to Egypt to buy food that it wasn't no more silver left to buy nothing. And not just in Egypt, but nowhere near Egypt either. So folks was like, what, you gonna just let us all go hungry? All the silver gone. Then Joseph was like, well, give me y'all livestock then. I'll trade y'all some food for y'all animals. And so they brought him their animals, and that year he made sure they had food. Now the next year they came at him like, sir, we can't even much hide it. We broke, all the silver gone, and we done gave you all the livestock. All we got left is our bodies and our land. Don't let us go hungry. Buy us and our land and give us some seeds to plant so the land don't waste away. Now I'm gonna pause right here. Some folks think that just because you find something in the Bible, that means that God co-signed it. We already talked about that in buku episodes. As far as I could tell, that man Joseph grew up to be a cutthroat businessman. If you don't believe me, just keep watching. So verse 20 essentially tell us that because of this right here, the folks being broke and giving up their land and their freedom for some seeds to plant, that's how Pharaoh ended up owning all the land. Everybody sold their land to him because the famine was that bad. Not only that, but everybody in the land sold themselves to be servants of Pharaoh, from one end of Egypt to the other. The only land Pharaoh ain't take over was the land that belonged to the priests, because they got a food allowance from Pharaoh, so they ain't need to sell nothing to keep their bellies full. So Joseph was like, now look here, I need y'all to understand what y'all is doing today. Y'all giving up y'all land and y'all freedom to Pharaoh. Now here goes some seeds. Go on, sow it in the land. But when it grows, y'all gonna give 20% to Pharaoh. And the rest, y'all and y'all people can eat off of. And the folks was like, you done saved our lives. You done took care of us. Now we gonna be Pharaoh's slaves. And that whole thing got turned into a law. Basically, this ended up meaning that everybody in Egypt, but the priests, ended up paying a 20% flat tax. Now, before I just skip past this, it's easy to think that just because God put Joseph in that position, he co-signed the fact that Joseph turned all them people into slaves. Like me that probably don't sit right with you. And it's a bunch of folks through history. Matter of fact, there's still a bunch of folks today who do this thing where they go find something in the Bible that sound like what they already want to do, and then they say that God approve of it because it's in the Bible. That's trash for a bunch of reasons. We're gonna be wrapping this series up in a few weeks, but for all of y'all who've been following or who actually care, I'm gonna give y'all a quick tip to make sure y'all smart enough not to let people lie to y'all using the Bible. In a lot of cases, the Bible be giving you the play-by-play. It might not necessarily be telling you as the play-by-play happening how God feel about what's playing out. When God want to say something about what's happening and how it's happening, he will. But don't assume that everything in the Bible is instructions. One of the greatest kings in the Bible had more wives than he could keep up with. That part is definitely not instructive. And later on, it tell you all the problems that came from that. So don't let some grimy businessman tell you that God co-signed slavery and oppression just because it happened in the Bible. Also, chattel slavery, aka the slavery of the Americas, is a really new invention. So the last thing you talk about in the chapter is how Israel posted up in the region of Goshen. And this time it seemed to be talking about Israel like the whole group of people, as opposed to talking about Jacob/Israel, the dude. And they say they came up on some property and started making babies, and all in all just started doing good. It also say that Jacob lived another 17 years after he came to Egypt, so he lived to 147. And when he knew he was about to die, he came at his son Joseph like, do me a favor, son. Promise me you ain't gonna bury me in Egypt. Once I done went on to be with our people, make sure you bury me with them, where they buried at. And so Joseph was like, I'll do what you ask. And Jacob was like, swear on it, bro. And Joseph swore it. And it say that Israel bowed down at the head of his bed, like as a way to say thank you. There go that whole Israel versus Jacob thing again. And I'm guessing at this point he had just got too sick to get up out the bed. So that's it for this week. If you don't know Jesus, but you're trying to get to know him, go and click that first link in the description down there. I'll see y'all next week. And as always, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.